Hey friends, the public's trust in mainstream media continues to plummet. We're going to talk about a recent Pew Research study that came out. 57% of Americans have almost zero confidence in the media. We're going to get into some exhibits A, B, and C as to why that's the case. You're not going to want to miss our podcast today.
Hey, welcome to the Ron Johnson Discipleship Podcast.
Glad you guys are tuning in. It's always a treat to share some time with you. And we're just coming off a Valentine's weekend. It's probably appropriate to do the post-mortem of our Valentine's.
That's how men feels about Valentine's. How much money did you spend?
So mine was very low-key this year because my lovely bride and her discipleship group ladies went away for their story retreat on Friday night.
Okay.
And then just till like
That's
noon on
hilarious.
Saturday or something. So, I mean, it was fine. We had a great time. They had a great time. Yeah. And, of course, good things happen when they get away on those story retreats. But in terms of sharing your testimony and all that kind of stuff. So I'm trying to think what I was doing. I was keeping busy. I had a breakfast with some guys on Saturday morning. And then I went out to do my Valentine's shopping, which was a little more low key this year. Some chocolate, a little. I went to Hobby Lobby. I went to support Hobby Lobby because I appreciate Hobby Lobby. So I was investing in Hobby Lobby, and you know what? I used to always. I don't know if you do this, but I used to always get Valentine's stuff from my daughters. Card from Dad, some little cutesy thing, from the earring store out at the mall or whatever that was. I forget the name of it now. I haven't been out there.
Claire's.
Yeah, there you go. You look at you.
I got daughters.
Claire's. That was it. Claire's for 100. Awesome. Yes, but I'm not doing Claire's anymore. But I again found some cute little stuff at Hobby Lobby and wrote some nice little notes to my daughters with a few chocolates, and so that was about it. Pretty low key, and not a lot of money. How about you?
Yeah, we traditionally don't sell. Well, we forget about Valentine's. Let's say it this way. We didn't even care enough to not celebrate intentionally. We're just like, oh, that's Valentine. So I normally just do something for my wife. My daughters are young enough that they're just not really into that. What we did, I had a good workout on Saturday morning, so that was what I did for myself. And then at night, I asked my wife, I said, hey, we normally do date night Friday night. Every Friday night we do date night. But I said, let's do double date night. We'll do date night Saturday night.
Wow, the old double date night.
I said, what do you want? She says, you know what, I want a bowl. I want a poke bowl, which is like sushi rice, and some steak. So we got some surf and turf for her, so maybe some steak.
By the way, we're overdue for doing some sushi or something like that.
Real sushi, Fuji, that's where we go. But this was just a poke bowl. But it was good, and we had a good time. We watched the show, spent some times, and we went to bed.
Very nice.
But we got sick the next day, so I don't know what's going on with that.
A lot of that going on.
I think a lot of that is going on.
Anyway, so since we're talking about dads and daughters, we do, when this podcast airs, which will be Thursday, we've got a week from Friday, I guess it would be, is the daddy-daughter dance, which is always a big hit. Do you ever go to that?
I went there once, and my older daughter, Alethea, is not a big fan of dancing.
Yeah.
But my little one, my 4-year-old, loves it. But I think she's a little too young, so I'm going to wait a couple more years.
I got you.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I had a good time. When we started doing that here, my daughters were a little bit older, but we still had some good daddy-daughter time. So
yeah, so the one-time one was a good time, but...
And, of course, I just wanted to mention anybody who's been watching our Sunday morning, I got a lot of great feedback from your session on the goals and the habits. And then, of course, Pastor David hitting this last week that was so good. A lot of good feedback from that already. I appreciated especially, it was kind of a side note as he pointed it out, But I loved him highlighting the fact that he loves his ethnicity. He loves his Latino background and the fact that Spanish is his first language. But he made a really, really good point, and one that we talk about on this podcast a lot, that once we're born again, we come and represent the kingdom of God, and we want to create kingdom culture, not German culture, Asian culture, Latino culture, Black culture, whatever culture, that it's really about Jesus culture. And that's what pulls us all together. I thought that was an amazing point. Had a few, when he was celebrating his Latino culture and how cute he is and how cute his accent is. We got a lot of laughter out of that one too.
Yeah, it's interesting. I grew up in Asian culture. I've been around many different cultures in the world, and I just realized every culture's got strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
I'm not putting any culture on a pedestal.
Right.
The only culture that doesn't have any weakness is kingdom culture. So anything good, I would say anything good about any culture is simply a reflection of kingdom culture.
Absolutely.
So instead of elevating these specific groups and make it your identity, why don't you just go for the best culture there is, the best identity there is, which is kingdom culture. And that just gives me a lot of clarity in my life and gives me a lot of sense of identity, and that I don't get pulled into these different tribal wars, because I'm just like, everyone's got strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, we all got our issues. I look at what John Dawson said, worked with YWAM. He said every culture has a redemptive gift. And I think it's true. You could highlight in every culture something beautiful, something godly, something kingdom about that culture. That's really its redemptive gift. And you and I both have traveled a fair amount to the nations of the world, and I love Sunday mornings overseas when we show up to worship the Lord. No matter what culture it is, the worship is always unique and special and vibrant, and just the way that people express their love for Jesus, it gives you a little foretaste of heaven, and you see the beauty again of the nations of the world. But anyway, we're about kingdom culture, which if we could do that and keep our eyes on that, it would solve a lot of the problems that we're dealing with in the world today, when people get stuck in their own little identity or their boxes, I guess.
I think another way to say it is the culture or the nation that reflects more kingdom culture wins. That's
Absolutely.
pretty much it. So we're all trying to emulate kingdom culture, because again, the good part of our culture is simply a reflection of God's nature, because God made a different culture. So we just want to reflect it more.
And at the heart of every culture, and this is just some good worldview training and teaching here, at the heart of every culture is the word cult, which ties it back to its religious origin. So every culture is just a reflection of what people worship, and who they worship and how they worship. And so you can look through that lens and examine a lot of different countries and go, aha, this is a value that is held in high regard in this country, or whatever. But you see what people's worldview is through the lens of culture, because culture is worldview externalized, or religion externalized. So anyway, good stuff. We've got a real treat. I'm not going to give it away, but we got a real treat this Sunday. Special announcement, special service. You're not going to want to miss it. So that's all I'm going to say. We like surprises at Living Stones, and we got some more coming down the pike here. I think I shared a few weeks ago my incredible frustration that, and I made the statement that you cannot have enough disdain and hatred for what our media, legacy media, has become, because it is just so slanted, so biased, so propagandistic in its approach. And I thought, maybe that was just my opinion, but evidently it's not, because the Pew Research Foundation came out with a study here. It says the American people's confidence in mass media appears to be continuing its spiral downward, according to the results of this new Pew Research Center survey. This is pretty astounding. The poll found 57% of the public has little or no confidence. That's strong. And quote, journalists to act in the best interest of the public. So it's more than just, we don't believe that you're going to report the news fairly. Now people are picking up on the fact that the media really does not have us, like Americans, interest in mind. Like, they're not thinking about us. They're not reporting for us. We cannot only not trust them, but we're very suspicious of their motives. Some conservatives are pointing to dwindling public trust in legacy media layoffs as the last gasp of a dying empire, but analysts say not so fast. So let's talk about that a little bit because, the whole idea of, where do you get your information from and how do you trust them? These are big questions I think that maybe even a lot of our listeners, are dealing with. So this is strong. 57%, zero trust, not even a little bit of trust. Like, don't trust the media at all. I've often been perplexed by this because I have felt that if you just brought at least balance, we don't expect the media to be one-sided or just share the news from a biblical Christian perspective, but how about just having one conservative or one Christian who's bringing a different perspective, who's bringing some balance, just from a business standpoint. Am I thinking correctly on this? Like, if you're wanting to make money and you're wanting people to watch your program, why would you do nothing but spew out negative neo-Marxist progressive, view of the news when everybody's sitting there going, no, that's not accurate. Why would you not provide more balance just from a marketing, money, business standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, and some people have done that. I think Fox News is the result of that. I think the company that owns Fox News is not even conservative.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Some won't even argue.
But even just to stop there, Fox News cable destroys all the other competition. I mean, it's not even close. So obviously, as a business model, he's like follow them, do what they're doing. But it seems much more religious or ideological because people are willing to lose lots of money to keep promoting a message or a product that nobody seems to be buying.
Well, I mean, you think about the Washington Post, who's owned by Jeff Bezos, who's a gazillionaire. And so I think they recently laid off a lot of people, Washington Post did. But again, essentially, they come from infinite money.
Right.
So they're fed by every time you buy Amazon. And I'm not even trying. I use Amazon all the time, but basically they're resourced by other streams of income. So there is some buffer there to protect them, even though they are laying people off. But I think another thing that people realize is that media, I know it's less powerful now, but media shapes the news. Instead of reporting the news, media shapes the news.
Explain that.
So in other words, whatever outrage or whatever you want people to care about, you report on that specific issue. So instead of reporting, be a mirror, you're a flashlight. So instead of being the thermostat that measures your temperature, you're the thermometer that dictates what temperature the country should be. There should be rioting or protest or anger or frustration. Or it should be happy and contentment. So, man, that is power. That is tremendous amount of power in which you will pay money for that. So you got to understand the nature of media has completely changed from whatever it should be, which is really a reflection of facts and what actually happened, to propaganda. And again, like, people will go to debt too. Well, they will spend lots of money to have that power to shape what's going on in the United States.
I think you made a good point too. Sometimes it's not based on making money because the people that own these companies, they don't need money. It really has become a tool because it's just, it goes against common sense. Even Hollywood, we talked about this. We were talking about the movie Top Gun Maverick. It had a strong, pro-American message, conservative, all the things that it was a feel-good movie, and the left hated it, And then they come out with all these crazy perverted things that nobody goes and watches, and they lose all kinds of money, but they just keep coming out with them. Again, it's like they're just simply trying to shape society, be that thermostat you talked about, and maybe money's not the issue.
So again, like, they're essentially lobbyists. Like, you don't go.
Absolutely.
You're a lobbyist in DC. You don't make money as a lobbyist group. You're giving money away. You're spending money to exchange for influence, right?
Right.
That's why the media and the music industry and the entertainment industry has become. That's why, like, some of these conservatives who are trying, or I don't even know, like Christians who are trying to make a good, godly movie. they have to be good because they need to make money because no one's supporting them.
Well, exactly. And I am thrilled, by the way. We're seeing the supply and demand, kind of economy work, that when people make those movies, sometimes they're low budget movies, but they're well attended. People come away going, wow, that was great. And then, it just keeps building to where they can finally get to a place where they're producing some good top quality.
Well, let's talk about the halftime show, the Turning Point USA halftime show. I mean, they essentially established a counter event to counter the messaging. Because let's be real, what happened in the halftime show in the Super Bowl was it wasn't about making money. It was about messaging. It's about sending a message.
It always is. At least it has been for the last decade or so.
Absolutely. And what Turning Point did was they create an alternate message that tens of millions tuned in to watch. I don't know what you watch. I mean, I don't know any of those people I don't follow music. Yeah. I'm not a fan of the Kid Rock. I guess he's like more of a conservative now. I don't really know much about him. I don't know about his past. I don't care.
Yeah.
But I tuned in because I wanted to see what that was like. And one of his songs, he actually mentioned Jesus. Yeah. He mentioned the Bible. Again, I was surprised. I was surprised that they would go there. But again, that's about messaging. It's about messaging. I don't know they're trying to make money. It's about messaging. And as we talked
about leveraging, what was it, 25 million people or something like that watch that roughly?
30, 50 based on the estimates or something million, yeah.
So that's a significant chunk to take away from the NFL, which is great. Competition is a good thing. Maybe that will cause the NFL to swing a little bit more central. I don't know.
Well, it affects their ad revenue for next year's Super Bowl. Because every 30-second spot costs this much.
The irony of all this is the guys on the field actually playing the game are probably, we've seen, again, the media hides this, but the number of people that are on their knees praying before the start of the game, the bipartisanship after the game where Christians come together on the 50-yard line and circle up, the opponent with you together because it's Jesus that brings you together. All the interviews of athletes that are giving glory to the Lord. On the one hand, on the field, you see this movement toward Christ, and then you see the owners and the commissioners and the choices that they make for entertainment and the messaging couldn't be more miles apart. Because that's not who's on the football field playing football games, people that, for the most part, are holding those kind of worldviews. I think that's going much more conservative as we're seeing across the nation. I think there really is a spiritual awakening among, that age group. But back to the media here, though. It says here the public's plunging confidence in journalist integrity of mass media and shifting digital media landscape have sharply impacted the readership of legacy outlets. Over the last decade, Pew found that those who say they follow the news closely has dropped from 51% down to 36%. The online traffic to the nation's top 100 newspapers has dropped 45% just over the last 4 years. And the evaporating readership led the Washington Post, the nation's third largest newspaper, to lay off over 300 journalists last week, amounting to about 30% of its workforce. It mentions here two other legacy media behemoths like NBC News have also made significant cuts in their staff in recent months. Now, I didn't realize this. A little trivia question here. How many people does the New York Times employ? I guess I'll just specify. How many journalists does the New York Times employ? Any idea?
No clue.
This blew me away. 2,700 journalists. That's a massive force of employees out there reporting on the news. That's huge. The Associated Press has correspondents in 100 different countries. Reuters employs 2,500 global journalists. So these are massive entities, and that's why they're saying, even though we're seeing a lot of conservative or Christian digital outlets that are, emerging, podcasts and the like, don't throw away legacy media's influence too soon because they're just so big and have so much money. But this is good news to me, and I think part of why 56 or 57% of the public shows no confidence, goes back to some of the news items that we were just encountering even in the last 24 hours. We saw another situation of a transgender young person who went on a shooting rampage. We've highlighted this in our podcast before. This is not isolated. This is a special niche group that seems to be committing these mass murders. What makes the normal person angry is the way the media reports. They kept calling this person a her, a she, when this is a young man who's very, very confused about his sexuality and is not a she. It is a he who's acting like a woman. So we get back into the whole transgender, all those issues and all of that. But I'm trying to find.
Well, even where's the reporting on the motivation in the Nashville shooting at that Christian school? I forgot the name of this Christian school. It took them 2 years to release the manifesto. Right, because no one's pushing for it.
Because it was clear anti-Christian bigotry that was going on there. Yeah. This is what I thought. This is the kind of stuff that makes you just hate the media. The shooter's transgender self-identity led Canadian police to refer to him by female pronouns and even absurdly as, quote, the deceased gun person. The deceased gun person. What kind of language is that? We can't even refer to the person's proper gender. We have to call feminine names, and because we don't want to stigmatize that population.
Okay, hold on. So it's interesting because how if I get into a certain circle and I hear a couple words, I'm like, oh, they're churchgoers. There are a couple key words. They're not like knock knock. What's their password? But they essentially are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Once you use those words, they tell you everything about your worldview. They tell you everything about how you think. They tell you really about who you worship, right? When you see next to someone's social media bio, him, him, or whatever it is, whatever it is, it tells you everything about that phrasing in the middle of this tragedy. Tells you everything about what the sheriff and what that whole nation, who they worship, and who are the gatekeepers.
I remember a few years back when this is dated a little bit, but when Tucker Carlson was still on Fox, he was interviewing one of these transgender folks who was basically saying that all of this ideology is going to be put into our schools and it will become the norm. All the pronouns, that he was, Tucker was kind of, like, are you serious? How many pronouns? And he was actually kind of laughing at her. And she made the statement, no, this is coming, like this is going to be the norm. It's amazing to me that prior to, again, Trump's election and some pushback on these things, like this is a police chief that's using, gender proper, language or pronouns, and everybody's been trained how not to cross the line or say something that, would sound, bigoted or whatever. It's amazing how embedded that was becoming, and I think it's becoming unembedded. Now we just saw a lawsuit, a detransitioner, who is suing, the medical community for what they did to him or her. I can't remember what gender it was, but anyway. So I think we're coming out of that insanity. But even here, Canadian police, talking the way that they're talking, that's all going through training, which is it's concerning to me. I hope we can dismantle again all of that, but it shows you how deep it is. Back to your point, to the worldview, the language, the things that trigger where you're coming from, what worldview you're operating from. I also wanted to highlight this. So we're seeing a very strong approach. President Trump ran on strong law enforcement, rule of law, bringing order back to our cities, getting rid of this sanctuary status, on a lot of these democratic strongholds where murders are happening like crazy. Of course, the mass deportation what's the word I'm looking for? Immigration under the Biden administration, up to 20 million people are coming across our borders. All of this creating just chaos and murders and tragic situations that we were reading about in the news. But the news is, again, refusing to giving credit where credit is due. they're making no connection between the president's, and ISIS policies to go after, especially the most violent of these folks, and what we're seeing is a massive decline in homicides and murders. But you wouldn't know it from the media because they refuse to make the connection. It says here, the president has long touted his deportation program as a means of ridding the U.S. of violent criminals. Department of Homeland Security boasts on its website that it has arrested over 760 illegal immigrants charged with or convicted of homicide, as well as thousands more who have been charged with or convicted of violent crimes such as rape and sexual assault of children, assault, battery, robbery, and burglary, kidnapping, domestic violence. I mean, we got a whole rap sheet there of horrific crimes. Yet the mainstream media outlets refuse to make the correlation between Trump administration's policies and the cratering of crime rates. Again, what do you think about that? These to me are Exhibit A, Exhibit B, which shows why the average dude out there, the average person, is going, we can't trust you because you cannot even give credit where credit is due.
Yeah, and decreasing crime rate is one of those things that's not the most sexy to talk about. People like to talk about increasing crime rate. People like to talk about murders and all these terrible things are happening. But again, like, these are the issues that I think every normal American should care about, that news should be promoting, because we're saying, hey, there's a decrease in crime rate. How do we do that? How do we get there?
And not just a decrease in crime. Just to put in context here, homicides have fallen to a 125-year low.
Right.
I mean, that should be on the headlines of every newspaper.
The question should be, what caused that, and how can we replicate that in every single one of our larger cities? That should be analyzed and discussed. But of course, this
because the average person really cares about being able to, for instance, to go to Chicago on a Valentine's Day date and walk the streets and know that you're not going to be robbed or your car stolen or whatever else going on. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt excoriated Axios for its reporting. She said, "This ridiculous framing is why Americans don't trust the media," she said in a social media post, linking this guy's Axios article. She said President Trump's securing the border, mobilizing federal law enforcement to arrest violent criminals, and deporting the worst of illegal aliens is exactly what is driving this massive drop in crime. So, again, I appreciate her straightforwardness on that. This is interesting, too. Washington Stan CIS Director of Public Policy Studies, Jessica Vaughn, she said it's unimaginable that the Trump administration's immigration enforcement actions are helping to make our communities safer and contributing to lower crimes. She says when you take 7,300 gang members off the streets, when you arrest tens of thousands of violent criminal aliens, when you attack and disrupt cartels, we didn't even talk about the whole Venezuela thing that Trump did, and other transnational criminal organizations, homicides and other crimes are going to go down. And she said what we should be seeing in the news is not an attack of our ICE agents that are working hard to protect our communities, but we should be celebrating the fact that this is actually working instead of demonizing, ICE agents, which I happen to think she's right on there. These are the kind of common sense things that just show you that the media is playing fair. Every administration doesn't do everything wrong, and every administration doesn't do everything right. But when they do something right, applaud them. When they do something wrong, point that out or whatever. But we're just not seeing that balance. I think the average American, as the Pew Research shows, is sick of it, and they're done. They're just going to turn the TV off. Not to mention, too, talk about media again. It used to be, I don't know about you, I love watching the Olympics. I mean, I loved it. Yeah. I felt this sense of national pride, and man, you're cheering for your people, and all of that. And then now it's become so again politicized, where we're asking our Americans what they think about, what's going on in America right now, instead of talking about the sport and instead of focusing on, how great it is that all the nations could come together and compete. It's become, again, just an opportunity to take pot shots, at this administration. And then when you hear people that are this is my pet peeve. You hear people that are there to represent your nation who don't love your nation. Like, why am I watching you? I have no desire to watch you. I remember back when this will date me, back in I guess it was the 80s, when the American hockey team won the gold. And they were a bunch of college guys playing against the world's best, professionals from other countries. And I remember being glued to the television because I was so, excited and so full of pride for our team and great job. They're just taking down the giants, and when they beat the Soviets, I mean, that was just unbelievable. In fact, they made a movie out of that. But that's kind of lacking for me right now. And I find myself almost disinterested just because there's no sense of national pride. And that's not across the board. There are some athletes that are representing us and are proud to be Americans. But, it's just all that undercurrent that just kind of takes the fun out of it for me.
Well, that's exactly what it is. I again, on my feed, I hear 2 or 3 athletes who are representing whatever causes, not the USA cause. And then I just lose taste for the whole thing. Now, that's not really fair because I'm sure there are tons of athletes who even if they hold views that not like whatever, they don't disagree with what administration is doing, they keep it to themselves. They realize, hey, I'm not here to spout my views. But just that whole idea just really ruined it. I wonder how many of those people who are spouting these views are really looking for sponsorship, because what they realize is that this particular sport is not going to be able to, provide for them the way they want to. So they're looking for sponsorship from some of these media sources. So they want to be the talking head. I don't know how many of these weren't coached right, but I think overall, I mean, that's not the sense you want to get going to. Just like we don't need to hear Hollywood actors and actresses lecture us on our worldview, and they're preaching their religion at us.
Right.
I mean, can you imagine a Christian Hollywood actor on the Oscars start telling everyone to repent and say, hey, you guys are in your sins, and what kind of uproar that would be? Well, that's essentially what they do every single Oscar or whatever it is,
pointing out our sins.
We don't want these millionaire athletes lecturing at us about our guilt or our sins or whatever. Why do we want to hear these Olympians doing that? And I don't think people so that just, like you said, that kind of just ruined the taste for everything about it.
And I guess the bigger issue is, and we're trying to come up with with obviously a biblical worldview solution here, not just whine and complain. But we were watching the women's giant slalom or whatever, and there was a woman who had been a gold medalist. Forget what country she's from, but she had a serious injury where 10 months ago, where she tore her knee up pretty bad and had to have surgery. And she came back, and nobody expected her to be able to come back, let alone to win the gold. And she won the gold. And those are the kind of inspirational stories that are everywhere during the Olympics, because all of these athletes, to your sermon, have had to have incredible habits to get them to that place. They've worked so hard, hours and hours of training every day. Those are the things that inspire us. Like, that could pull I don't care what country you're from, that could pull everybody together. Focus on those things. Focus on the things we share in common. Focus on people made in the image of God. Focus on determination, grit, overcoming obstacles, sacrifice. That's what the Olympics, to me, was always about, was those amazing backstories that inspired you to, work harder, be better, pursue your goals.
Well, talk about 4 years of practicing in the secret when no one sees you for one moment to either triumph or, more pain and disappointment. That's drama as peak, and again, why would you use the opportunity to alienate potentially, half the country? Now, again, they have the freedom to say it. They have the First Amendment right. They can say whatever they want, right, but viewers have the First Amendment right to turn off the TV and says, I don't want to watch that. That's the issue there. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways.
Anyway, so where do we go from here? Do you? I mean, as Christians, where do you think our role is in terms of media journalism and all that? I mean, do you ever see a company emerging that would approach things from more of a biblical worldview?
I think natural selection in news reporting is taking place. You got Nick Shirley, who just flies out to what state was he at? Minnesota. Yeah. Now he's in California, just doing some grassroots reporting. I'm at the point in which when something happens, I try to get as firsthand evidence I can of what actually happened, because everyone's got a camera, everyone's got a video. I think independent reporting, individuals who have become influencers, I know that has a bad connotation, but they're really influencers because they're truth speakers. That has impacted my view and my reaction. And that's not perfect.
Yeah.
But at least there's not like a layer of bureaucracy between what they report and what they actually say. I go on to mainstream news, not to get news, but to see what the mainstream news is saying about this thing, which I really made up my mind about.
Right.
So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm on X. I follow a few different people, and if it's important enough, they will talk about it. And if it's not important enough, or it's not something I don't really need to, because here's the other things. We get inundated. I don't want my mind and my brain. Focus is so important for me. Getting my mind in the place of truth and rest and peace and joy is so important for me. I don't want to give the keys to my peace and my joy and my emotion to mainstream media. So I am safeguarding my news feed. Someone, even if I trust them, but they're just super negative, I got to get rid of it because it just affects my heart too much, you know? So I think that is the future of news, is people curating different people to say, hey, what I hear. Some stuff like I just won't ever hear about, and I'm okay with that.
Well, that's I think another problem of our 24-hour news cycle and social media platforms and everything is we are exposed to so much pain and trauma and problems in the world that people 200 years ago, working on a farm, they just focused on working on the farm or their immediate little community. It's really a burden. It can be an overwhelming burden,
Absolutely.
I think. So that whole word you use of curating, I think, is important. Like, you can't respond to everything that's going on. We can't be expected to have an opinion about everything that's going on. I mean, it's distracting and it's deflating. So I think, like you're saying, I love what you said in your message a couple weeks ago. You said, what, one of my goals is to not be concerned or emotionally engaged, burdened with things that you have absolutely no control over. And I thought, man, that is some good wisdom right there, because I think every one of us faces that challenge. You just have this low-grade anxiety or discouragement, borderline depression, because the world is a messed up place. And it used to be we only had to deal with our little corner of the messed up world, but now we're exposed to the mess globally, and it's almost overwhelming at times if you don't take control of your life and what you're going to listen to and how you're going to roll.
How my focus be a good friend, a good employee, a good dad, and a good husband.
Yeah.
And those are my top priorities. How can I do that when I'm inundated with 99% of stuff I really watch, I have zero control over. And people are, and how this industry works is they want you to be outraged. Yep. They want you to be frustrated. They want you to care, because that's where the click comes from. That's where the money comes from. Even conservatives do the same thing. Like, this is going to be the worst thing ever, so you better donate. If you don't donate, the world's going to burn. America's going to go to hell. Yep. And again, like that doesn't help me become a better husband, a better dad, a better follower of Jesus Christ. That doesn't help me. So I want to be aware. I think being in the world but not of it is becoming harder and harder in our culture today, and we need more focus to be able to do that.
And I like the idea of focus local. Like, I can't change NATO, whatever, but I can certainly impact my own backyard. I can love people well here at our church family and make an impact in their lives. I can love my wife and my kids. I mean, that is where it all begins, and then it kind of goes out from there. So the local church is the hope of the world.
Well, and we're not saying don't engage, don't write to a congressman, don't vote. I'm not saying any of those things, but like, there are so many things that people just want you to be outraged for outrage's sake. And I don't want to participate in that.
And I know we're out of time, but This to me was unbelievable. The father that spoke at the school board meeting, because the teachers had taken his child out of classroom with all the other students to engage in an anti-ICE protest without the parents' knowledge that the child, so imagine your kid being taken out of your public school classroom and they're handed a sign and now they're marching down the street. And these are kids that are like elementary school kids. I mean, it's, to your point about outrage again and emotional, this is kind of where we've got. I mean, we're now our public school children are pawns for somebody's political agenda. I mean, this dad was rightfully outraged that they would do that without even seeking his input. So, but this is that emotional trigger stuff that we're living in, where there's not much rational thought, and there certainly isn't much planning about how we really deal with the problem or how we have any kind of civil discourse. So, anyway, a lot to talk about. Glad you guys have tuned in today. We're out of time again, but until next Thursday, we'll look forward to seeing you then. All right, have a great week.